Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education 2024. We hope you had a refreshing and enjoyable time. Let us proceed with our next agenda.
The next the next agenda we will having Assistant Professor Dr. Glyceria Frakiadaki from Aristotle University as our fourth keynote speaker today. Please welcome Ade Dwi Utami MPD PhD as the moderator of this seminar. Mrs. Ami, time and place is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our afternoon session of the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education. And we will have our fourth keynote speaker for this conference. And here with us, Assistant Professor Glyceria Fragiadaki. It's a miracle, I have to say this, to have you with us today. And we are really grateful for that. And before we start, I would like to introduce
Recording
you
in
to
progress.
all the participants that we have today, quite various, come from researchers, policymakers, and practitioners, lecturers, and professors, also postgraduate students. And ladies and gentlemen, Assistant Professor Glyceria Fragiadaki is an assistant professor at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, Greece. Prior to this, and held a position as senior research fellow in Conceptual Play Lab, where we met at Monash University, Australia. And her research is focused on young children's and learning and development in science and dialectical interrelation with the child's social and cultural reality. So the research and expertise focus on pedagogy and education, teaching and learning in early childhood education, science education in early childhood setting, professional development, collaborative learning, academic writing, persevered teachers using the qualitative analysis or qualitative methods, and using the specific theory on cultural historical theory. Dr. Glyceria, we will have 1 hour with the question and answer session for these keynote speakers. So I think all the participants are ready. I will hand it over to you. The time and place is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And I'm so honored and pleased about having this great invitation. Thank you, Professor Utami, for being invited here to be a keynote speaker. It's just a pleasure being here with you. So I will try to do my best today and share some insight about my research and how we can actually set up a research framework to work with young children in early childhood science education. But I'm focusing in early childhood science education, but you will see that the presentation is more broad, and so you can get inspired and have some insight in general in early childhood education. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I will share my presentation right now. And here we are. Could you just confirm that you can see my presentation, please? All
yes,
good?
we can see that. Yes, now in slideshow mode.
Perfect. Okay, here we are. So today I would like to share some insights about how we can enhance scientific literacy through play during the early years. So before that, as Professor Utami has just shared, I would like just to give you an insight about my work here in the Aristotle University. So I have relocated from Melbourne a couple of years ago, and I'm now a professor in Greece. So Thessaloniki, where I live, is here. It's the vice capital of Greece. Athens is here to orient yourselves. Here we have created this lovely research group. It's our research team, and we have this great project that is going on at that point. We call it Playproofs project, and we are trying to enhance scientific literacy through play in Greece. So we have this lovely research team, and we are lucky enough to be founded by the Hellenic Foundation for Research and Innovation in Greece. So we are very, very pleased about that, because it's a huge success for early childhood education. So we mainly work around how we can introduce play in early childhood education reality, with a clear focus on how we can introduce playful learning and play-based settings, so we can support children's learning and development. But we have a very specific focus in science education and STEM education, and we work a lot of that. So this is more or less the way that we love to work here in Aristoteles University. But today I will share some specific, mostly empirical insights about my research, and hopefully it will be inspiring for you too. So let me give you an overview of what we are going to discuss together today. Firstly, I would love to share some insights about the dialectical interrelation between play and learning in early childhood settings and in early childhood science education specifically. And afterwards, I have chosen to talk about through empirical insights. So I would love to share with you some research and education reality aspects that we can discuss afterwards as part of being researchers in early childhood education. And then I will devote the half of my speech about the documentation of learning pathways, how we can be sure that children have learned through their play, and I will focus on that a lot. And at the end, hopefully, my main goal is to open the floor for a discussion between us to discuss and comment about what we have shared today. So please be free to share any comments or questions or whatever you think it's important and relevant to the presentation. So to begin with, we have a huge question here to try to solve. What is the essence of the interrelation between play and learning in early childhood science education? And let's see, we know from the policy documents, firstly, that scientific literacy is something that it's really critical for the child's overall well-being. If we try to conceptualize and determine and provide a term about what a scientific literate child is, we would say that it's the child that is able to form science concepts. It's the child that is able to develop also scientific practices and connect science to everyday life, try to make sense of science like a real world issue, and try to provide answers to real world problems, and also have sustainable habits and to make informed decisions about the future. So we have this lovely conceptualization about what a scientific literate child is, and we know that from the policy documents, and especially from the PISA and OECD documentation. But we also know that all these aspects are really critical and are fundamental conditions to create and promote what we call in the literature the science citizens of the future, the citizens of science. So it's important to support children to be scientifically literate in order to become informed and critical and reflective and responsible citizens of science. And we have, I'm sure that everybody has understood very clearly this need after having experienced the COVID pandemic and all these parallel challenges that we are experiencing all the time, like the climate change, the energy crisis, and all this ecological and sustainability crisis. We have understand that it's really, really important for us and for our children to be scientifically literate. And we have understood also that this is a high priority for our societies to be sustainable and to make informed decisions for their future. So we know that this is critical, but also we know and we have documented that this is also a very central, scientific literacy is a very central concept in science education reform agendas worldwide for a long time. So this is really a high priority, and the way that we love to talk about scientific literacy is that this is actually a basic right for all young learners. It's not something an adding value, it's a right. The same way that play is also right for the child, play and education is also a right for the child. So scientific literacy is a right for the child and for a young learner. And what we have learned from our research, and there's also a growing body of literature around this issue, is that scientific literacy can and should begin really, really early in life, from day one, as we say. And this is really, really important, as we can see from the empirical research, because it's a means for us to avoid any type of disparities and prevent any type of social inequalities if we begin early to promote scientific literacy in early childhood settings and the home settings also. So how can we begin? This is always the problem. When we talk about playful learning, what is really, really important is to understand that we have to set up a set of teaching and learning goals in science education when we are talking about science, but in general, when we are talking about playful learning. So when we are talking about setting up a play-based setting, it's important to have very clear teaching and learning goals. In science, we have these four main categories of goals, which are important, and we know that it's critical to have a very broad understanding around these goals. So we have four categories. We have firstly the content knowledge, which is actually goals that focus on supporting children to understand the properties of matter, the concepts of science, the phenomena of science. So we need our children to have this sense of content knowledge firstly, but this is not enough. We don't want children just to know stuff. We also want them to know how to learn about stuff. So this is something different. This is what we call procedural knowledge, how children can actually understand and learn and try the processes and the methods and the techniques and practices of science, how they can set up inquiry explorations, how they can set up experiments, how they can actually manage to learn about science. So this is a different category too. And we also have here the epistemological knowledge, which is also important because we need our children to be able to interpret the data that they are available to them, to make predictions, to do testings, and finally coming to some conclusions about their work. So it's really, really important also to cover this category of teaching and learning goals too. And importantly, it's very critical to connect this knowledge about content, about procedures, about epistemology with their everyday life. So we talk about the contextualization of their learning. And what does that mean? To support the children connect their learning and their knowledge with their everyday educational reality, with their everyday world and everyday needs, with what is important for them and for their communities and their societies and their culture. So we have these four important categories of teaching and learning goals. And it is also important for us to understand that we don't have to go through all these categories, all these goals every time we try to teach science in our early childhood classrooms. We just need to be aware that we have to cover at some point all these type of goals in our class all over during the year. So to begin with, we have to set up very clear and very precise teaching and learning goals, and then move to playful settings, setting up a playful environment. However, it's really important for us to understand that our goal here, when we talk about early childhood science education, our goal is not to introduce children to the world of science. This is an argument that was very famous a couple of decades ago, but now the narrative has changed. We talk about not introducing children to the science world, but exactly the vice versa, to bring the science into the child's world, which is completely different. And I'm sharing here this lovely example from a classroom in Greece. It's a kindergarten preschool classroom. So you see here that the children were playing with their little dolls and their little doll house, and they were enjoying their play, their imaginary play with their dolls. And the educator came in and said that, oh, I see your dolls are really, really hot. You need to do something to make them feel more comfortable. So why don't you try to make this little fun here to work? So the educator introduced this little fun, and also these wires here and the battery, and let the children experiment with the materials in order to try to make an electrical circuit. And then afterwards, he said that, oh, it's getting really late. Why don't you try to turn on the lights here? So she gave them a little lamp here, and also the wires and the battery, and asked them to try to make the light turn on. So the idea here was that the educator introduced into the child's world the material and the knowledge of science in order to allow them to play and experiment, try and experiment with the materials to set up electrical circuits and understand how we can make a fan or a light to turn on. So this is a very, I think, very insightful example of how we can bring the science into the child's world. And we know that it's really critical to do that through play, because we know from Vygotsky's legacy and work that play is the leading activity during the early years. So it's important for us to try to set up our teaching and learning in science through play. And I'm sharing here this lovely quote that Vygotsky talks about play. And he actually says that during play, the child is an average above his, is beyond the average age, is a head taller than himself, which actually means that during play, the child is able to manage much more than she or he is able to manage when she or he is outside play. That's why Vygotsky talks about the contents forms of development, which is something really, really critical when we are considering play as a learning environment. So when the child is within play, he or she is experiencing condensed forms of development that allow him or her to reach more advanced levels of learning and development in science and in general. And when we talk about play here, I would like to give a more to be more precise and give you the framework that I am conceptualizing play here, because we know that there are a lot of play conceptualization in the literature about play. So when we talk about play, we are focusing around play as an imaginary play. And we know from the literature that play, imaginary play, is actually creates a new world for the child. It's we determine imaginary play as the play that the child is able to create a new world, to live through this world and have new experience and manage to set up a new whole universe for her or for him. So we know from our research and we know from the literature that through their imaginary play, children are able to construct and also deconstruct and reconstruct their understanding about the social and cultural world, but also about the physical and the technical world, environment world. So this is really, really important because when they are in their play, they're able actually to enrich and transform and expand, stretch their reality. And this is what we love about imaginary play, because it creates numerous possibilities for the child to be engaged in exploration and much more than that. And through our research, we have showcased that when play, imaginary play and science are really connected over time, this creates a science motive for the child. And so, and also gives the child the agency that we need in science and create conditions for building science literacy. So the more that we interrelating science with play over time, as the child grows up, beginning from the infant and then being a toddler and afterwards being a preschooler, the best results we have in terms of science learning and development. So in order to create a science motive, we need to balance play and learning in everyday education reality. So we need to begin with the teaching and learning goals, as we said before, but at the same time, we need to keep this balance, which is really, really important. We don't need to focus more on learning or more on play. This dialectical interrelation between play and learning, it's really, really important. So yes, we need to keep the teaching and learning goals, but at the same time, we need to keep play very central in their children's experiences. So this dialectical interrelationship, this balancing, it's really, really important for us. So we need to promote knowledge and skills and understandings about science, but at the same time, we need to be very careful to be sure that children are engaged with what we are doing. There is a personal meaning to what they are experiencing, and also there's an enjoyment in what they are doing. So this balance is really, really important for us. It's the balance that actually it's the balance between the didactics of science and all that knowledge that we bring from the didactics of science, but also on the other hand is all that knowledge that we bring from the pedagogy of play. So these main areas needs to be balanced when we are talking about play-based learning in early childhood science education, and when we are trying to enrich and enhance children's scientific literacy in the early years. And of course, we need to be very, very clear about that a playful scenario or a playful context do not constitute an ensure learning through play. They usually, educators and sometimes researchers say that, okay, it's if I put on a white robe and make the children pretend that they are scientists, this is imaginary play, or this is learning through play, but it's not. Playful learning is something much more than a scenario or much more than a context. We don't need children, for example, to just pretend to be bears or pretend to be astronauts or something. We need them to learn through this imaginary play. So setting up just a context is not actually enough. That's why you are talking about learning through play. We don't need to set up a situation and let the children learn and then allow them to play. Or we don't need to begin with play and then put this play into a specific framework. It's all about learning through play, because we understand and conceptualize play as a dominant and not an auxiliary or supplementary activity. And I have this lovely example here for you to have a look, where we were working with our students in Aristotle's University in scientific toys, and I will discuss about that later on. So you see here that the students have created this lovely scientific toy where there was a really important problem. There's a cat here. There was supposed to be a cat here. So the door was supposed to let the cat down from the roof of the house. So there was a problem that the children had to solve to help the cat come down from the roof. But in order to help them, see, they have to manage to open this little box. And here is where they use magnets and they tested the attraction or repulsion of the magnets and the magnetism in order to open the box. And then there was a torch here, a little torch, so they have to take the torch and go here and try to light up these little boxes and create some shadows. So they have to explore about how shadows are formed in order to find some clues, and then use these clues to jump over the ladder here and go to up to the roof and save the cat. So you see here that there was no learning before that, no learning after that, but it was pure learning through their play. Through their play, as children were playing with their scientific toys, they were using the magnets and the lights and all this lovely stuff that they were available to them in order to form the concepts and provide a solution to the problem. And this is why we're talking about the educator and the adult being in the children's play as a play partner, because if you are talking about learning through play, but you're considering the educators outside this play, it's problematic. We need to be in children's play in order to support them learn through play. So this is really, really important for us. So we talk about this balance, about teaching and learning goals, and about which is actually the didactics of science, and playful learning, which is about the play pedagogy. And we talk about the need to keep them balanced and in a way that makes sense to the child. And now we are going to have some empirical insights about how can play become a means of learning and teach science in the early years. To be more specific, we are going to talk about visualization phenomena and share some insights. So since we're talking about playful learning, as we said before, we need to begin with specific teaching and learning goals in science education. So we need to go through the four main categories of goals that we talk at the beginning, which is content knowledge, procedural knowledge, epistemological knowledge, and contextualization. But now, as you can see, we have specified the roles, the goals regarding the phenomena that we need to approach, which is here, it's the dissolution phenomenon. So, for example, a goal that is related to dissolution could be, for example, to distinguish between soluble and insoluble solids in liquids, or to recognize the nature of the solution, which is actually a mix at least of two materials. So we need to have very specific goals, and we need to do that for every single category. For example, to make predictions about whether or not a material will dissolve, and to connect dissolution with real life situation. For example, when they are trying to prepare a pasta and they are sprinkling the salt within the water. So it is important for us to begin with a set of goals. And here is how we can set up a situation which is science education, but it's not playful science education. So you see here that we have these lovely children sitting on the floor of the classroom, and they are trying to check if the material that they have available here for them will be dissolved or not. So firstly, we have a question to be investigated. We have to check if the material will be dissolved or not. And then we see that the children are in the process of to determine how they're going to investigate this problem. And then we ask them to make predictions and make experimentations with the material, and then explain what they have seen and formulate a result, and then document the new knowledge. This is a process that we follow that it's very much in line with the didactics of science. So the question here is that task, is that situation that we have set up correct for the children? Of course it is correct. It's very much in line with the didactics of science. But the question here is that, is it playful? Is it play? And probably is not, because the children are not playing, they are not in imaginary situation, they are just sitting there waiting for their turn to check the material that they have selected. So we don't have this balance that we need here. We talk about the balance between play and learning. So we can say that it's more about learning and much less than play in this example. But how actually can we keep this balance? And that's why I'm providing here a very different example of how we can approach the solution in early childhood settings through play, and at the same time being very specific with the teaching and learning goals that we need, and be in line with the framework of the didactics of science. And I have this reference here for you if you want to learn more. So what we did in this research is that actually that we set up an imaginary situation where there was a puppet. That was the puppet that we were using the whole year for the children. So it was an owl, and the owl was supposed to be ill. So she had to have a hot beverage to feel better and cover the cold that she recovered from the cold that she had. So the owl asked children to prepare the beverage for her and to put some sugar in it because she wanted it to be sweet. And the children, being in the imaginary situation, being in their dollhouse, they prepare and they put a spoon of sugar within the water to prepare the beverage. But afterwards, they all start complaining and saying that, wow, there's no sugar in there because I can't see it. And the children became enter a situation where they had to convince the owl that there is sugar there, even if you are not able to see it. So they had to explain the dissolution phenomenon to the owl, and in the same way that they have actually to understand the dissolution phenomenon on their own. So the owl was resisting and was saying that I can't see it, there's nothing there, and the children were trying to make her believe that there is sugar there, or even if you can't see it. So you see here that we actually use the puppets, the puppet to engage children with the whole activity here, and to make the activity, the task, personally meaningful for the child, and to try to make this connection between everyday knowledge and experience with scientific concepts and scientific understanding. So you see here that children afterwards brought some plastic shrimps to check that these are not going to be dissolved. So this is not for every material. Some materials like salt can be dissolved, but the shrimps that are plastic cannot be dissolved. So you see here how the puppet and the imaginary play act as a means of reinforcement of science exploration and science learning for the children. But of course, we kept this all the goals that we have set at the beginning. We kept all that goals, and the goals were there. And but the imaginary situation we created around these goals was completely different. They didn't have to just wait there for their turn to check their material, but they were in their play, in their imaginary situation. And the teacher was also there, because the teacher was using the puppet, was the one that was behind the puppet. So all the learning happened through this play, imaginary situation. And you see here also how we actually continue with children's drawings and their notes and their scientific narratives. And you see how children sit down and try to make some notes with their writing, and try to make some drawings to explain to the old what was happening and why this material sugar was dissolved. And so you see how rich this activity, this task became from the children, instead of sitting there waiting their turn and being in this very rich situation and promoting their learning. And you see here, I'm going to move to another example about magnets and magnetic properties, about how we can promote these concepts in early childhood settings. And again, being in play-based situation, we need initially to set up a set of teaching and learning goals. We don't forget about that. It is our first step to create a playful learning environment for our children. But you see here, if we stay at just in the teaching and learning goals, that we can set up something like that. For the example, we ask the children to bring something from the classroom that can be can be magnetized, and also find something that cannot be magnetized. So we are trying here to distinguish, make a distinction between the magnetized and non-magnetized materials. So we ask them to create the two categories. These are not the magnetized, these are magnetized. And then we ask them to prepare a table and check if the material is magnetized or not. So this, the question again is this a correct task? Is this a suitable activity for the children at that age? Of course it is, but it's mostly based in the didactics of science. It is not based on what we call playful learning. It's not play if you just sit there and wait for your turn to check if the material that you have chosen is magnetized or not. So this balance is not actually, in that example, is not actually happening. We see that we are focusing more on learning and less on play here. But let's see how we can change this situation. And here I'm sharing an example where the child came with this beautiful drawing about the universe and the planets and the UFOs that she has created. And it was such a lovely drawing. And here she has crafted an aircraft. So she came to the teacher and said that, oh, look, teacher, what I made here. It's a universe and it's an aircraft. And the teacher asked the child if she wants to make her aircraft moving around the universe. So what they did is that they put a lot of staples behind this spacecraft in order to have some metallic elements there. So they put a lot of staples, and then they behind the paper they put a magnet, and they start moving the magnet, and this way was in the same way the aircraft start moving too. So the child was able to discuss with the teacher, being in the imaginary situation, how the distinction between the magnetized and non-magnetized materials, the concept that the power of the magnetism is going through the paper too, and also check the repulsion concept, just playing with the drawing and the aircraft. So we see here that the goals were much more the same, but the framework was completely different. And also these lovely examples where they just did a princess and a castle, and they managed to move the princess up and down to the castle, having just some staples on her dress and using a magnet behind that. And also here, the same situation with a fish in a fishing bowl. So they're moving the fish with the magnet, and you can see here that we had a huge red magnet here. So the children were moving the magnets, and here a maze or things like these that they are using. Actually, here we are discovering the repulsion between magnets, and so you see how this is a thief and this is a policeman, and we have placed magnets from the at the back of these figures, but there we have placed the magnets in a way that the repulsion was happening. So because of the repulsion, one magnet was forcing the other away. So it was like the thief was trying to go away, and the policeman was going running behind the thief. So that was definitely a play situation where we had the goals for magnetism, but there was nothing like waiting my turn to be engaged with the science activity. And I move now to more examples about scientific toys, and I would love to share here this input if you're a researcher in the area, and if you want to use a methodology like that. I should say that all these examples are actually set up like an educational experiment. We know that Hedgard has introduced this method of the educational experiment, where the researcher and the teachers are working together, closely together, to set up a very condensed form of development for their children. So all these examples that we are going to see from now on are based on an educational experiment where the researcher and the teacher work together to set up teaching and learning goals in science, but at the same time set up a play-based environment for the children in order to learn and in order to enrich and enhance their scientific literacy. So educational experiment is a method that we can use as researchers in early childhood education to create these condensed forms of development. So I will now move to the scientific toys, which is actually examples of how play and learning can come together within the educational reality in kindergarten and early childhood studies in general. And when we are talking about scientific toys, it's completely different to the idea of play. If we are not, or a game, we are talking about the specific object. So science toys or scientific toys are the toys that are created. They are 3D materials, 3D toys that they are improvised and reusable, and you can create them within your classroom with the children. And the main idea behind the scientific toys in the way that we are conceptualizing them is the balance, again, between play and learning, and also about the role of the adult, the role of the teacher being in the child's play. So we are going to see several examples of scientific toys, but I would like to highlight that when we are talking about scientific toys, is not actually a representation of the physical world. Is not what you will see, for example, the circle of the water in nature. If you find in the store something like a representation or something, this is actually not scientific toys. Scientific toys are improvised and reusable and made by children, at least in the way that we are conceptualizing them here. And I would love to give all the acknowledgements and the credits to the amazing students that we have in Aristoteles University and my previous university, University of Patras, that they have created these amazing scientific toys during our courses. To begin with, my favorite one, here you can see a box, which is actually a scientific toy in the way that we discuss about that. And you see there's a little hole here, and you can put in the torch and let the light set within the box, and the light is traveling and just reflects on the mirror, reflects again on the other mirror, and then at the last one, and then reflects down at the bottom of the box. And have a look about how it looks like in practice. So the students have created this little box with this little door down here. So you can ask the children to come and see what they can see inside. And of course, they cannot see anything, but because there is no light in that. So it's important for us to make children understand that if there's no light, we cannot see. But you see here how the educator are using, and the children, of course, they can handle it. They're using the torch to set light within the box, and the light, as we said, is traveling and reflecting, and so they end up lighting the bottom of the box, and they can see this little ladybird here. And you see how the students are experiencing and enjoying this this box, this scientific toy. So this creates a great opportunity for us through their play to talk about the concept of light and the concept of how the light travels into the space, and also the concept of reflection. And you see again here how we talk about reflection and light, and the students have created this lovely board game where we have a very serious problem. The elves couldn't find their way through the snow during the night to hold the presents to the children, because they were supposed to help Santa Claus. So you see here how we can use a torch and pieces of mirror in order to make the light travel and reflect and support the elves find their way through their snow during the night. And again, here you see a light box, as we call it in the literature, where we have created this opening at the box that you cannot see through it if there's no light and the cover is the door is covered. But when you set light into the light box, you can see the colors of the ocean and the seafloor very clearly. So this creates an opportunity for us to talk about the life in the seafloor and how light travels through the water too. And here another example about shadow and the formation of shadow. So you see here the students have created this lovely box, and they have these blocks here. So they're blocking the light, and they are holding a torch like that. So the way that they're blocking the light with their blocks there is creating figures at the bottom of the box, so they can change the figures here from a house to whatever they want, to a wolf or to the Red Riding Hood, the little Red Riding Hood or something. So they can create a narrative and talk about a story as they actually forming also the concept of shadow creation, shadow formation. And you see here a catapult, and how children are creating a catapult, and how this creates us a very good opportunity to talk about how the dynamic energy can be transformed to kinetic energy, and they're using this little present to make them to throw them away to the children, because it was the same scenario about Santa Claus trying to deliver the present to the children. So they were testing different types of present and with different light. So they were testing how far something can go, if it is heavy or if it is lighter or something. So we see here the catapult, and which is actually a simple machine that the children had created. And we see here a hydraulic system. They have created this lovely system with this it's a part of the ejection without, of course, the sharp part, and they are actually pushing the water. This is water, and they have colored it, and they are pushing the water, and the water pushes the other part of the injection here, and it actually creates the opportunity for the bridge to open, because they have this lovely problem that the boat was really high, and it couldn't actually go through the bridge. So they created this hydraulic system to make the bridge go up and down at the same time. And here is also another.
I'm sorry, Dr. Fragiadarki.
Yes, of course.
Due to the limit of time, we have 2 minutes, and I believe
Oh.
because the audience will have very much question on this interesting project. So I would like to spare the Q&A's time. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Utami. So I will go through some slides here to have a look about how scientific toys can look like in practice. And so I will move to how we can actually document children's learning, and how we can actually be sure that the children learned through their play. So because of the time limits, I will go through a set of drawings very quickly. Just I would say that drawings are really important to document children's thinking, and we know that it is important to allow children to draw their thinking in science, and also allow them to create some scientific narratives, science narratives around their drawing. For example, you see here how the child depicts the microbes at the beginning of the teaching intervention, which is actually family, and it's very strong and very wild, and how you see here how the child depicts the microbes at the end of the intervention. So you can actually document the development of their thinking, and do that in the same way here, when you see we were actually approaching the science, the formation, light and shadows formations, and you can see how much the child's thinking about shadows has evolved over time. So the drawings were really important, and also here they are using different types of documentations. I go through that really quickly, but you see how they're using drawings as a concluding remark to talk about the circle of life of the frog, or how they are using drawings like a post-test to see if they have actually managed to understand a shadow formation, and here make a poster, and here make a little book and another one, and here also create scientific narratives around their drawings and around their thinking in science. So I will end up about the taken away message of what we actually discussed together during the last hour. What is important for us in here is that we need to keep this balance between play and learning in science education and in general. And what does that supposed to mean? That we have to be very careful about the teaching learning goals that we have. So we need to keep all this richness and knowledge that we have from the didactics of science, but at the same time combine it with all the knowledge and that we have about the pedagogy of play. So we have to bring these words together in order to keep this balance and make the most for children's scientific literacy. And we also, I also need to highlight that it's important to think about children in science like sophisticated and competent agents of their learning. Children are not young scientists, as we like to say, and this is a very common sense term that we are using, young scientists, but they are not. They are just children, and they're enjoying their learning pathways in science, and they are competent and sophisticated agents of their learning. So we don't need to promote the caricature of the scientists, but let the children explore science through their play. And to end up, as a researcher, what is really important for us, and this is what we are working with my team in Aristoteles University, we are trying to create a pedagogical model to achieve this balance, but also we are trying to set up methods and methodologies that document it and mapping and unpacking all this learning in play would be actually able. And I will end up here with some references, and I'm sharing here the link with the website of our project, which is under construction, but please keep that in mind because there will be a lot of material coming in a while. And also I'm sharing the Twitter page of the project with you because we have this lovely community of learners in X, and we are exchanging there a lot of inspiration and examples of everyday educational reality. And this is also our Facebook page where we have set up a community of learners and educators and researchers around scientific literacy through play. So I will end up here, and I hope that I was in time. After all,
Yes, we still have for question and answer, and we have already, I think, some curiosity mind here to asking you questions. So I would like give a short. It is very powerful presentation, very interesting and huge project with all the complexity related to scientific literacy that you've been working on through play in early childhood education, and. Everyone, I think, would like to know more looking at the play proof. And since been working together in this project, I can see how you level up and develop that more in your country back to Greece. And then looking at what happened with the data and have quite similar premises related to the experimental activity with the science, with the experiment or other conventional or traditional practices where the children not really play, and how you make it balance between the play and learning related to the component of play and learning itself is really, I think, thoughtful how to understand the play and learning how can be together in one activity. So okay, I need to save the time to invite all the participants that you, if you have questions, raise hand. Or we have already also offline participant, you can ask your question here.
Okay.
Okay. I think we have here one participant join us, Indah Febriani. Please deliver your question.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation, Glikere Fragiadaki. In one of the slides, it mentioned that playful scenario does not ensure learning through play is happening. In Indonesian context, philosophically, we internalize concept learning through play, right? However, they are in reality separated in practice. Therefore, it poses a complex situation for educators to find the balance between integrating scientific concepts while maintaining play between the children, especially in the case if the educators perceive play only as a fun activity, and or they find it difficult to be play partner for children. Do you have any recommendation on how we as educators or researcher can identify the balance between play, children's agency in their imagination during play, and incorporating science through their learning? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Inda. It's such a powerful question that we are asking. It's very, very interesting. And actually, this is, I'm afraid the answer is not very simple, though. But, and we are working on that a lot with my team to create a model that actually showcases how we can do that in practice. But I think that the idea is to begin with the teaching and learning goals and try to incorporate these teaching and learning goals within play. So I think that the example that we have used with the puppet was a very specific example about how to do that. So the educator was in the imaginary situation. She was supposed to be a knowl and that, nothing more than that. But at the same time, she had in the back of her head all the teaching and learning goals set that she needs to promote. So I would suggest that beginning with your concepts, the concepts with your goals that you have there for your children, but try to incorporate it exactly in their play, not begin with the goals and move to play. Try to do that at the same time. So the most that you are keeping the goals and the play in the same time, I think that the more successful you will be with your play-based learning, because a very practical question to think about, if I am getting that right, is that is for you to think that, am I allowing time before and after play to understand what they are doing? Because we know that from the literature, we know that play is the leading activity for the child. So if they are outside play, they won't probably learn in the same way that we want them to learn when they are in play. So what I'm trying to say is that the suggestion is to keep the teaching and learning goals within play. Don't forget about the teaching and learning goals, because most of the times when the educators get out of the imaginary situation, they would say that, oops, I forgot about the concepts. Or they should say something like, oops, it wasn't actually like play. So you have to have this feeling that it is play, you are playing, children are playing, but at the same time, you are promoting specific teaching and learning goals. And you need afterwards to document if they learned through their play, through the documentation that we talk about. So keeping the same time for play and learning, I think it's a very practical advice, if I can say so.
Thank you, Professor Glyceria. And hopefully there are more projects looking at to the importance of scientific learning, and nowadays looking at the sustainability as well, that may be connected each other. There will be more research on this context.
Sure.
Do we have other participants to asking questions? Okay, we have another participant. Please deliver your questions.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Ade, for your time, and thank you, Professor Glyceria, for your beautiful presentation, and really, like opening my mind about the difference of introducing the science and get the science into the learning practice truly. And as a teacher trainer, I work as a teacher trainer for early childhood teacher, and it is pretty much difficult to really open their minds about that science is basically easy, because at their mind, science is very fancy, like expensive and whatever about technology. And do you have any best practice about this situation? Because if we talk about Indonesian context, like around 90% of the early childhood institution is basically in the society, which is pretty much not really in the, in the very good socioeconomic background. Maybe you can have developed.
Yes. Julia, thank you for the question, because it's a very important question too, because we see that from the literature, we know that there's always this struggle of the educators to understand that science is fun, science is quite easy if you try. So what I'm doing with my students, I'm trying to, in the university courses, I always try to begin with examples. Because, for example, if we start talking about, you can start talking about, I don't know, about the reflection of light and how the travel lights into the space and provide the science knowledge firstly, but you can actually do exactly the opposite. Begin with the example. We begin with showing the students and afterwards the children what is actually happening and try to explain that with the scientific knowledge. So maybe you want to begin with the everyday concept, with what is available for the students, what they really know well from their understanding, and go the other way around and end up with the scientific knowledge. Because we know that, because he talks a lot about the relationship between everyday knowledge and scientific knowledge. So beginning from the everyday knowledge, it's always much more easier to end up to the scientific knowledge. But in education and in tertiary education too, we actually do the opposite. We begin with a theory, and then we ask students to come up with an example or try to incorporate their knowledge in an everyday reality, but it doesn't work, we know that. So beginning with exactly the opposite way might be much more easier for them.
Thank you so much, Professor. Also, okay, I think all's good now. Thank you so much, Professor Glyceria and beloved participant Yulia Hidayati, for your lovely question. And I'm very sorry I have to cut this session already because the limited of time, but definitely we need to invite Professor Glyceria here for talking more interesting topic. So, dear participants, that's the end of our session today, the fourth keynote speaker, and we will follow for the next over to the Master of Ceremony.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Glyceria.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Professor Tami. That was a pleasure.
Thank you, Professor Glyceria, as our keynote speaker today, and Mrs. Ami, the moderator for this session.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward on the next agenda is the second parallel session. Audience, please kindly to join the breakout room for this session. If you need further assisting while joining the breakout room, kindly contact one of our committee. Thank you.